What a weird series in Baltimore. Plus, the Braves promote one of their top prospects in Tate Southisene to Double-A Columbus. Is Eric Hartman next? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. In just a minute, I want to talk about, one, that weird series in Baltimore, and two, what to look for this week. Trade deadline obviously is coming up. A couple different directions the Braves can go. What did we learn from the weekend? And what do we know about the deals that have already started to happen? Is this going to unlock the market and really get things going between now and August 3rd? But before we do that, I think it's super important to talk about the massive promotion news that we heard over the weekend. Tate Southisene, Atlanta's first-round pick last year, has been promoted from High A Rome to Double-A Columbus, per reports from Jeff Ponce of Baseball America and confirmed by a couple other very, very reputable folks. This is not just one person going on a limb. This is confirmed by people who would know these things. And I don't quite think everybody's internalized how big of a deal it is that Tate Southisene is moving up. This is the second time he will be promoted in season. And this is his first full professional season. And for a kid that was considered to be overdrafted by some last year, remember Braves took him at pick number 22, and he was, a lot of places had him going in the mid to late 30s. And so despite being a prep player, he signed an underslot deal. He signed for $2.62 million on a slot value of roughly $4 million. And Atlanta's biggest bonus in the draft last year actually went to fourth rounder Briggs McKenzie, not Tate Southisene. This is the second promotion for Tate. And when you look at the numbers that he's put up, they're pretty impressive on their face, but doubly so when you consider the age to level context. So to open the year, Tate got 51 games in Single-A Augusta, the lowest full season level in Atlanta's minor league system. Friend of the show, Noah Adcock-Howarth, broadcaster there, had him for the first close to 2 months of the season. Tate Southisene hit .297 with a .429 on base and a .500 slug. It's a .929 OPS. One of the, if you're looking at conventional statistics to evaluate a prospect, which most MLB teams don't do this, but just sometimes that's all we have, right? One of the things that stands out the most is when any prospect can put up a 3-4-5 slash line. 300 on base, 300 batting average, 400 on base, 500 slug. Tate was 3 points of batting average away from a 3-4-5, and the on base was a 429, right? And he was young for the level, right? He 19 years old. He won't turn 20 until after the regular season ends. His birthday is October 6th. So he was just over a year younger than the average player in Single-A. The average Single-A player is 20 years old, right? So they promote him to Rome. And with the Emperors, 255 average, 379 on base, 428 slug. So it's an 806 OPS. And at first glance, it's going to sound like that is a drop in production. People are going to say it's an 806 OPS. He had a 929. His batting average lost like 40 points, et cetera, et cetera. The important thing to point out here is when you put him in High A, he is over 3 years younger than the average player in High A. The age to level adjustment there carries a lot of weight, does a lot of work here. And so after this, Atlanta promotes him. And it's and not only did he make the move to Rome, but after an adjustment period, he kind of took off. In the month of July, he's hitting .296 with a .402 on base and a .479 slug. Again, he's very close to a .345 slash line, despite being 3 years younger for the level. So I guess the news broke last night that he's being moved to Columbus. And we don't have official word on why he is being promoted. No, with the information that I've been able to figure out, my assumption is that Atlanta wants to see him against a higher level of pitching. There's a couple things in the profile that he does really well, just period. Walk rate in the minors this year, 16%. Chase rate, 21%. Those are both in the 80th something percentile for the entire minors, right? He's not swinging and missing a ton. 25%, 26 if you round, which is like 66th percentile, right? He doesn't take a lot of swinging strikes. He makes a lot of zone contact. But there are weaknesses so far in the profile this season. One of them is his ground ball rate. 46%, 32nd percentile in baseball. In the minors. 36% in the minors. So below average ground ball rate. Thing they want him to work on. Pulling the ball in the air is not really his thing. 10% pulled air rate. And we've talked about this before. A fly ball in the air will have higher statistical performance and do better when you pull it versus if you hit it straight away or opposite field. Okay. So being able to reliably put the ball in the air to the pull side is a valuable skill that will help unlock more power production for you. It is like literally the hack that Ozzie Albies has used to be an above average power performer at second base despite being 5'8" and like roughly approximately the weight of my left leg. But the real reason I think that they are promoting him, his passivity at the plate. And I'm not wording this as a negative, right? I want to be clear. I'm not saying this is a problem. I'm saying that this is a thing that he does, and I'm assuming they want to see how much of this, what adjustments does he make to this. So his overall swing percentage in the minors this year has been 38.9%. That is 14th percentile in the entire minors. So he generally does not swing a lot. And then in the zone, it's obviously higher. It's always higher in the zone, right? It's 59.42%, which is 17th percentile. So if you were making a profile of Tate Southisene, the type of hitter that he is at the plate, you would talk about the fact that he is an all-fields hitter that is remarkably patient and willing to take his walks, but has some ground ball issues, right? That would be how you would describe Tate Southisene. And so getting him from Rome to Columbus to put him up against better pitching in the upper minors, for me, is the best way to get information about Tate Southisene. One, can he still maintain a really good walk rate when he's required to be more active at the plate? And does his zone contact decrease against his swinging strike rate, his whiff rate, go up or down against guys who have better stuff and a better ability to locate? Again, 85% zone contact. It's like top quartile. But some of that is selectivity. If you take a lot of pitches in the zone and you only swing at the best ones, your zone contact's going to look good. But you're also setting yourself up for success, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But Atlanta wants to test him, and Atlanta wants to see what he can do. So the big overall takeaway here from this for Tate Southisene is, one, this should let him play shortstop almost every day. When you look at Columbus, there are not a lot of rated prospects there. Listen, we love our Clingstone friends, right? It's about 45 minutes from my house. We love the ballpark. We love the team. We love the atmosphere. The game calling's great. Big fan of their broadcaster, all that stuff. But sometimes the actual baseball in the field can be tough to watch because they are at a talent disparity compared to a lot of their peers. Now they have one of the organization's top prospects, high energy, very aggressive approach when it comes to base running, very passive approach at the plate. He should be able to play shortstop almost every day, which, to their credit, in Rome, after a week of second base, he's been shortstop almost every time he's been on the field, right? But he should play shortstop every day, and a lot of the scouts now have talked about they believe he is gonna stick at shortstop, right? There was an open question going into the year. Was he a shortstop or a second baseman? Would he be a center fielder? What were they going to do? And there is a lot of scouts have discussed somewhat recently that they've seen enough to project that he can stick at shortstop in the majors. Now, the ceiling is a question, right? What's he going to be as far as average, above average, Gold Glove? We don't know. I'm not going to say he's going to be a Gold Glove shortstop, but he could play there. So really curious to see what Tate Southisene does. And also what this promotion and some of the promotions they didn't make says about the upcoming trade deadline. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. One of the big talking points somewhat recently has been, all right, who's going to move at the trade deadline, right? Alex Anthopoulos has said that the team wants to be aggressive for upgrades, which we've heard him say things before. He has to do it. But somebody asked me just last night, does the Tate Southisene promotion make it more likely or less likely that he's moved at the deadline? And my instinctive thought is to say less. Less likely he gets moved at the deadline. And the reason for that is if you were planning on moving Tate Southisene this week, why would you take him out of an environment where he is hitting very well? Again, in July, he's close to a 3.45 slash line. Why would you take him out of that environment and move him into a tougher environment where he's likely to have some growing pains in the first exposure to the level and run the risk of somebody being potentially not scared off or turned off, but thinking a little bit less of him as you're trying to make a deal, right? And I'm not saying that MLB teams evaluate prospects by the conventional stats, but we're talking about human beings, right? And if I'm a GM negotiating with Atlanta and I pull up Tate Southisene's and Tate Southisene in our database, in our proprietary database that we have, and I see that he went 1 for 18, and this is, let's say it's Saturday. He goes 1 for 18 to open his time in Double-A. It's human nature. That's going to make an impression on me, and I'm going to have to work to get past that. So if you're planning on trading him, you wouldn't do this. You'd leave him in high A until after the deadline. And that's made people ask about Eric Hartman. Because Eric Hartman, so when AA went on, I think it was on 680 The Fan earlier in the week, last week. And he said that there's nobody who is off the table as far as prospects, but there's one guy they would have a very tough time moving. He didn't name names, but everybody's assuming this is Eric Hartman. And if you look at his full season statistics, it makes sense. 22 home runs. So he was always a good contact, or he was considered to be a good contact bat. But the power has exploded this year. Like last year, 89 games, 5 homers. This year, 22 home runs I had the number of games here, in 89. Yeah, 22 home runs in 89 games this year. He had 5 home runs in the same number of games last year. He's also, by the way, hitting like 29 points better. And still doing that, right? And they've said the fact he didn't move up, does that mean we're going to move him? And I don't necessarily think so. I've been told this is likely coming after the trade deadline. And I think part of this is right now, he's going through it a little bit in Rome. People are going to point to his batting average and say that he's struggling. Okay. 156 average in the month of July. 19 games. The on base, 353. Still good. Better than it was in June. The slugging, 344, which is also not good. There are some mitigating factors here. One of which is that it's a 154 batting average on balls in play. Okay. I really do think that Eric Hartman is likely going to stick around in Atlanta. I want to remind you, though, what I talked about last week, about if they move him, we should trust this front office because they have been very good at not trading guys that actually ended up being really good as far as prospects are concerned, right? And when I made that conversation last week, a lot of people responded with Shea Langoliers. And he is a good player. He's also out. He just tore his meniscus over the weekend, out for the season. You hate to see that. But the original conversation that we had in that show was, which prospects do you regret moving? And for me, the fact that you got Matt Olson in that deal and you were able to develop and get Drake Baldwin to the majors means I don't regret moving Shea Langoliers. You are right that he is the best performing of all of the prospects we've moved under AA. But for me, I don't personally regret the deal because it got you Matt Olson, and you've been able to be okay at catcher other than that couple month time period this year, or this month time period this year when both Sean Murphy and Drake Baldwin were hurt. But outside of Shea Langoliers, as far as prospects are concerned, Atlanta's done a very good job of knowing who to move and knowing who not to move. They didn't trade Michael Harris. They didn't trade Spencer Schwellenbach. They didn't trade Drake Baldwin. They didn't trade A.J. Smith-Shawver. They did trade Jared Schuster. They did trade Ryan Cusick. They did trade Joey Estes. They did trade Christian Pache and Drew Waters, right? So, the upcoming trade deadline, I don't imagine they're going to move Hartman. I don't imagine they're going to move Southisene. Cam Caminiti is probably going to stay, right? We'll see what it takes to get some of these deals done. And honestly, if any of those guys do get moved, I am going to be disappointed, yes. But I'm also going to trust the organization that either for some reason there's something about those players that meant they weren't going to pan out like we thought they were, or that the players that you get back are going to be worth it. And so it'll hurt less than if you had moved these players in a deal that didn't work out for Atlanta. Now, there are some guys who I do expect are going to be trade chips and are going to get moved. And the two that I think have the most value, if you were to try and move them, J.R. Ritchie and Alex Lodise. And I wrote about J.R. Ritchie just Monday morning as part of a larger story asking the Braves to start copying what the Boston Red Sox have done and cashing in on some of these back-end pitching prospects. I know that not everybody is going to be healthy. It is we know for a fact any group of pitchers will not be healthy, but it's doubly so if they're Braves pitchers, right? But assuming everybody's healthy, let's go through the names that realistically, not speculative, realistically, you will be discussing as potential starting pitching options at spring training. Okay, ready? Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, AJ Smith-Shawver, Spencer Strider. To me, those four guys, if they are healthy, they have rotation spots. Done. That's not a conversation. Those four guys, if they're healthy, if they're pitching, they have spots. And I know some of you are going to say Strider should not, but he's making $22 million. If he's healthy, he's in the rotation, okay? After them, and again, thought experiment, everybody's healthy, right? That's four spots. After them, here is a non-exhaustive list of everybody that realistically is going to be in play for the fifth spot. Bryce Elder, out of options. Renato Lopez, out of options. Bullpen experience, that helps. Grant Holmes, out of options. Bullpen experience, that helps. Joey Wentz, out of options. Bullpen experience. Didier Fuentes, optionable. Bullpen experience. Herson Waldrop, maybe optionable if he gets the fourth option year that I speculated they activated them early to make sure he would get that. J.R. Ritchie, if he's not traded, right? Optionable, has some limited bullpen experience. Owen Murphy, optionable. That's 8 names. So the first 4 plus, that's 12 guys. And again, assuming normal amounts of health. So you take out 2 or 3 of those, you still have more guys than starting spots. And that assumes you don't add a starter in the offseason, which I'd like to assume Alex Anthopoulos has learned that lesson on accounting on guys being healthy, counting on that top of the rotation group being healthy. That list of 12 names also assumes 2 things. One, that your guys who need to be added to the 40-man roster aren't considered options in spring training. Lucas Braun's in a Rule 5 year. Drew Hackenberg's in a Rule 5 year. Cedric DeGrandprix's already Rule 5 eligible, but he's taking a leap this year, and you got to either add him or you're going to lose him. That makes it 15. You've got a handful of relief prospects that have starting experience, and we know the Braves like to try that and see if it works. Victor Medeiros, he won't have any options next year. Connor Thomas will have options. Eliezer Hernandez was DFA'd over the weekend. I've been told they expect him to re-sign. We're waiting to see if anybody claims him or not. Ray Kerr, rehabbing right now, he's out of options. Even if you assume every single one of those groups of players loses a guy or 2 to injury, you're still looking at 15 possible rotation options. So my argument, the thing I wrote about this morning, trade some of them. Because like the big takeaway, and again, Boston's done I go more detail in the piece. Boston's done a great job when they've gotten the evaluations right. They traded Kyle Harrison. But when they've gotten the evaluations right, they've done a really good job of understanding a number 5 starter, which a lot of those guys in those later groups profile as number 4, number 5s, A number 5 starter has more value to a team that needs a number 5 starter than he does to a team that already has 6 or 7 number 5 starters. You might view him as your 9th best starting pitching option, but the Athletics might see him as their 4th or 5th, right? The Astros might see him as their 5th or 6th option. The Twins might see him as their 5th best option. And so I want the Braves to be aggressive and move some of these guys. The problem is it's hard to move too many of them right now, right? J.R. Ritchie's a guy you could see that happening. And it kind of depends on the evaluations, right? If they think that J.R. Ritchie's control issues are going to get ironed out and that he can find a way to generate some more whiffs so that he can raise up from a number 4, number 5 to a number 3, then you probably don't move him. Owen Murphy, if they think he can add more velocity to his fastball so that he can be a number 3 starter, because again, the traits on that 4-seam fastball are elite. It's just really hard without everything else in the profile being awesome for that to work. Joe Ryan's done it. That's the model, right? And if you know what, just trade for Joe Ryan. Let him mentor Owen Murphy. It's like trade for Kevin Gausman and let him help Person Waldrop on the splitter. Great. Trade for Joe Ryan. Let him help Owen Murphy. They're similar pitchers, right? Owen Murphy is the Joe Ryan starter kit. So Atlanta's going to be looking for pitching prospects, for frontline pitchers at the deadline. And they have depth in their starting pitching to make these deals. I do also think Alex Lodise is a possibility. He has been raking in Augusta. And remember, after the draft, he went to Rome. But this year, they assigned him to Augusta because they've been asking him to do some swing changes and things like that. And he's hitting .256 with an .826 OPS. And unlike Tate, he's a year and a half older than the level. So he should be doing really well. He's got 21 home runs. He's driven in almost 60. It does look like some of the swing changes they've been asking him to do have been successful. His chase is still a little high, right? His strikeout rate's still below average. Like, there is still some issues here. But the approach has gotten better. He's gotten much better at elevating the ball, right? So, swing decision's a little bit better. Batted ball profile has gotten a lot better. He is one of the best in the minors at not hitting ground balls. He's significantly above average at pulling the ball in the air, all that kind of stuff, right? We know the defense plays. And so now that Tate's been moved from high A to double A, that means you have a space open to move Alex Lodise from single A to high A, unless he's traded. Always an option. We'll see what happens. And I feel like because of the pedigree that he had coming out of college and showing the ability to take coaching like he has, the Braves are it's entirely possible that he will be more valuable or more desired by organizations now than maybe he was in the draft. Because he's shown the ability to get coached. And yes, there is an age to level adjustment that works against him here. But, again, it's more about the underlying fundamentals in the profile, the changes that he's made, and the willingness that he's had to do them. I've been told by people that he's been very coachable. And that is not always something that you see from young players, accomplished college performers who are in what some would argue or that they could potentially feel is a lower level than they should be. So credit to him for that. And that's kind of Atlanta's whole thing, right? They do a lot of background work on character, work ethic, all that kind of stuff, clubhouse fit, how these guys do. So there you go. No guarantee all these guys will be traded. But for the first time in a while, the Braves have a lot of trade chips that they can move. And a lot of people are not, a lot of us are assuming that Alex Anthopoulos is going to stick to his word and move some of these guys in a pursuit of a frontline starter, a bullpen piece, things like that. And I think the weekend in Baltimore did show us that, like, maybe the bullpen's a bigger issue than we realized. And there's still work to be done on this roster. And then also, sometimes weird stuff just happens in a small sample. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby here. Again, it's going to be a longer episode. Thank you to everybody who responded positively to that last week. I apologized in the show about a lot of these things recently have been running 45 minutes, and I was like, I'm sorry. I know we sold this show as a 30-minute show, and a lot of people were thankful and or appreciative of the extra content. So if you're one of those people, I'm glad that we could accommodate you. If you don't like the longer shows, I apologize. That's why I try to kind of give you up front, here are the 3 segments. Here's what we're going to be covering so that you can skip to the one you want if that's not your cup of tea. Braves beat the Orioles 2-1 to take the series over the weekend. All 3 of them were 1-run games. 2 of them went to extras. I'm pretty sure they all took years off of our lives. And I think we learned a couple things from the weekend that we can take forward, both in just our understanding of baseball as a sport and also this team's needs before the trade deadline. Okay? So the first thing is, I think we've learned, correction, I already knew this. I think this weekend has cemented, if you weren't already convinced of this, that in a short series, weird, fluky stuff can change the outcome. Jimmy Baseball himself, Jim Jarvis, committed 2 errors in one of these games. And what was wild is both errors were dropping a Pete Alonso pop-up in shallow left field. Like, it was not the exact same batted ball, but it was very similar pop-ups. The first one, it looked like Michael Harris was calling him off and he didn't disengage, and he ended up dropping it. And you could see on the replay afterwards him and Harris talking, and it wasn't acrimonious. It wasn't in any way like rude or anything. But it really looked like Michael was saying, like, hey, when you hear me behind you calling this off, a center fielder coming in, it is much easier for me to make that catch than a shortstop going back. Because shortstops aren't used to getting called off unless it's that center fielder. Anything in the infield, if they're calling for it, it's their ball. And a lot of times when they're interacting with an outfielder, it's that weird ball that's behind third base, that kind of flary pop-up kind of thing where the left fielder's trying to race to get there, the shortstop's trying to race to get there, the third baseman sometimes trying to race to get there, and it's just like, can anybody get there in time? So that was the first error. And then Jarvis does it again. And this one was like just a couple steps off the grass. Like, it was routine, and he just biffed it. What I did love, side note here, what I did love about this, we got a lot of shots. Shout out to Braves Vision for having all of the feeds from Camden Yards and doing a really good job of showing us in the dugout. We saw a couple different guys go over to Jarvis after that second error. Not in a scolding way, not in a you gotta do this way, but like picking him up. We saw Mike Yastrzemski. We saw reliever Victor Medeiros, who was on the mound for that second error. He got out of the inning. He got out of it. I think he had a strikeout to get out of it or whatever, and was appropriately fired the heck up, and it was great to see. But we saw those guys going over to Jarvis in the dugout and try to pick him up, right? And then we saw Walt Weiss put him right back in the lineup for the finale, which was also a great thing to see. But we had other errors too. We had Mauricio Dubon. He wasn't charged with an error, but we saw bottom of the ninth inning, Didier Fuentes out for a second inning. Game's tied 2-2. And Jackson Holliday fouls off a bunch of fastballs. gets a 5th consecutive fastball, and I'm going to rant about that in a second. Just remind me. And Mauricio Dubon got to the ball. It's to his left in the left center gap. And I think I put the high home video in the newsletter recap of the game. His route starts off, he's a little too deep for the ball. And so he's running, like he makes a correct read as far as moving that way on the crack of the bat. But he's a little too deep. And so he has to kind of cut forward like the very last second as the ball's doing one of those sinking things because of the spin. And he just like biffs it, just off his glove. He just biffs it. And it's possible a little bit of this goes back to making the diving catch on Friday night that he made, where I think he told the TV broadcast crew on Saturday morning that the Friday night catch knocked the wind out of him, and he was sore the rest of the night into the morning. He was pretty sore in his chest and abdomen. It's possible that just he had a little mental hiccup. He just got yipped up a little bit at another diving catch, and that's why he missed it. But that ended up putting Jackson Holliday not only on base, but at second base. It wasn't ruled an error, right? Because one of the rules of an error is it has to be more than ordinary effort to make a play, right? And the fact he had to leave his feet, how little hang time the ball had, and all of that means it wasn't an error on Dubon. But that put a runner on second. He advanced to third on a deep fly ball out. And then, like a hot shot grounder past Ozzie, scored him for the walk-off for Baltimore, right? We saw Ozzie on Sunday right through the wickets. Ground ball right at him. Double play ball. And it looked like Ozzie was cognizant of the fact that Leody Taveras is a fast runner. He's played center field and right field in that series. But fast runner on first base. This is the 9th inning, by the way. Fast runner on first base. And so it just goes right through the wickets on Ozzie. I don't know if he looked up briefly to see where the runner was. If he was just anticipating, I got to be quick to the bag. And he pulled his glove up too soon. Completely whiffs it right through the 5-hole. Runner goes first to third, ends up coming in to score, which ties the game at 2 and sends it to extras. And let me just Matt Olson single-handedly turned this game around in the bottom of the 10th. Atlanta does not score in the 10th inning. They do not only do they not score in the top of the 10th, if I remember, I don't think they even got the runner past second base. And so, Danny Young's in for the 10th. Dylan Beavers draws a walk. So they intentionally walk Pete Alonso to load the bases with no outs in a tie game in the bottom of the 10th. And Danny Young throws a great sweeper away to Gunnar Henderson with Atlanta using a 5-man infield. Legally, you can't have 5 infielders. You can have 2 guys, you have 2 infielders on each side of the second base bag. They have to be on the clay. You can't add a third one on either side. So what Atlanta did was they gave Mauricio Dubon an infielder's glove, and they put him on the left side, but they brought him forward one step onto the infield grass. So technically, he's not violating the shift ban because there's still 2 infielders on the clay on either side of second base. He's just an extra guy in the grass. They didn't need him, though, because the soft liner from Gunnar goes straight to Matt Olson at first, who catches it and beats Pete Alonso back to the bag for double play. Unassisted double play. Final out comes from Tyler Kinley. It's a pop-up in shallow right field. Matt Olson's better than anybody in the last couple years at running out to right field and making those catches. I wrote this up last year on the newsletter, actually, that I think it was July or August. Matt Olson had more catches in, it was more than 120 feet away from home plate than every other first baseman in the league combined. Matt Olson's very good at sprinting back to make those catches in shallow right field or in foul territory. And then Atlanta goes on to win this one in the 11th. I think you learned a couple things. I think you learned flukiness can absolutely take over a short series. And that's why it's too hard to say you're a good team, you should win every single postseason series, right? The 2023 Braves should have beat Philly, and they didn't because the offense went quiet. But you can see from this series how a single play can change the dynamic of not only a game, but the whole series. So, thing number one. Thing number two is that the leverage arms in this bullpen are doing the best that they can, but you got to give them reinforcements. We still don't know what's going on with Robert Suarez. He's still not back. We don't have word of a rehab assignment. But if you look at the leverage pitching this weekend, you had Dylan Lee. He gave up 2 homers over the weekend. You had Raisel Iglesias. If I saw this right, these 2 bullpens, and I say saw this right, I calculated, I pulled it up and checked it for the final game recap on Sunday. These 2 bullpens combined for 3 blown saves and 12 runs, and only 6 of those were earned. Now, 2 games went to extras. You're going to have unearned runs and extras. That's just how it works with the nature of the Manfred man on second base. But these 2 teams went to their leverage arms because they were all 1-run games. And what happened? 3 blown saves and 12 runs. You very easily could have swept this series. You very easily could have lost this series. You maybe even could have been swept in this series. And yes, we want Atlanta to add a starter. Yes, they need to add a starter. And I'm going to come on here and be angry and mad if they don't. But it also feels like you need to add a leverage arm. That you're going to, all indications, you're going to get Robert Suarez back. He's been out since June 19th. So we're just over a month now. We're a month and 8 days since he went down. Raisel Iglesias, Dylan Lee, who he looks like he's in one of those periodic week or 2 week rough stretches he has every year. Didier Fuentes has stepped up. He's had 2 2-inning outings in the last week. Dylan Dodd appears to be a guy. And by the way, great piece in Fangraphs that I read last night about how his fastball is very reminiscent of Josh Hader's. Great piece if you're a pitching nerd. I dropped it in the Braves Today Discord. If you want to join, links in the episode description. It's free. And Victor Medeiros looks like he could be a guy that you're not going to use him in the 8th or the 9th if you have other options, but he could be a very valuable guy. He's got gas. He could do some stuff. But there's questions about if you can trust Tyler Kinley or not. There's questions about if you can trust Danny Young or not. That last spot's kind of rotated through. If you add an impact arm to the rotation, if you add a Joe Ryan or a Kevin Gausman or whoever, you can move Grant Holmes into the bullpen. And that makes your bullpen better too. But I still think you need to look for a starter. You also need to look for a leverage reliever. You need to bring in somebody who can slot in the 7th or 8th if you need, right? If Iggy's down and Suarez is going to close, he can be ahead of Dylan Lee, and you can go this guy, Lee, Suarez. Just find another leverage arm. I plan to dive into Tyler Kinley this week and look to see, is this just bad homer luck on the slider like Raisel Iglesias had last year? Or is this something bigger? And the problem is, if it's bad homer luck on the slider for Kinley, is Iggy's solution last year was to just stop throwing it. And you can't do that if you're Tyler Kinley. You can't just go fastball, curveball when your slider's been the best pitch and the reason we acquired you. But I plan to dive into that this week if I have a chance and look in Tyler Kinley. But grab at least one postseason starter, grab a SP2, grab a leverage arm, and I still wouldn't mind a bat. I still wouldn't mind an outfield bat that is on-base minded, right? Taylor Ward, I think, would be a good fit. We saw him in Baltimore all weekend. There's a lot of teams out there have guys that are thought to be available. Maybe you just make this together and you get an outfielder or at least a bat and a starting pitcher. Like maybe you go Kevin Gausman and George Springer of the Blue Jays. Both guys are on expiring deals. Maybe you go get one of these Royal starters and Lane Thomas. Maybe aspirationally you try to get a Reed Detmers or a Jose Soriano from the Angels, and then you grab like a Joe Adell or somebody to go along with it. I'm still torn on Adell. I need somebody to sell me on this one. But I do think it needs to be at least one postseason starter. It needs to be a bullpen arm. I don't care if they're a lefty or a righty. As long as they can get lefties out, I don't care what hand they throw with. And I think that's the right way to look at this. Everybody says it's got to be a lefty, it's got to be a lefty, it's got to be a lefty. Dylan Dodd's a lefty. He gets righties out better than lefties. He's not bad against lefties. He's gotten much better. But he is still better against righties than lefties. The handedness of the pitcher doesn't matter. The handedness of who they get out is what matters. And if you're an elite enough arm, you can get both sides out. Nobody says, oh no, Raisel Iglesias is vulnerable against lefties because he's just a really good pitcher. Nobody says, oh no, Robert Suarez as a righty is vulnerable to lefties. He's just a really good pitcher. But like, you could see potentially up to four ads between now and the trade deadline, which by the way, I'm going to try to have some time put aside to go live on trade deadline day to talk about these deals, assuming Atlanta waits until then. I don't know. Maybe they get their deals done early, in which case I'll just record a quick emergency pod and throw it up. But either way, big week for the Braves. You're in New York. You face the Mets. The Mets are, as kind of always, going through it right now. They lost Juan Soto to a calf injury. This is the other calf than the one he had hurt and missed time on earlier in the year. But this one's worse than that one was. He might not make it back the rest of the year. You've only got roughly 8 weeks of season left. He missed 3 or 4 weeks last time. If this one's worse and they have nothing to play for, he may not make it back this year. But tonight it's a battle of lefties. It's Martin Perez versus Zach Thornton. You'd be excused for not knowing who Zach Thornton is. He has made a grand total of 4 call-ups. 4 starts for the Mets after being called up. 5th round pick in 2023 out of Grand Canyon, which is a college, but also a rock formation. Or technically not a rock formation. Technically it's the absence of rock, right? Anyway, 93 ERA, 1-1, 4 starts. I'll talk more about him this afternoon on the scouting report when we break down. This is what he's thrown in his 4 starts. This is what he does as a sequencing and all of that, as we prepare you for what tonight's game will look like. So stay tuned for that. It's both a written article and a live stream on the YouTube channel. And then I post it on audio immediately after we go off the air. Tuesday, Christian Scott versus Chris Sale. Hey, Christian, I know you're coming back from Tommy John and you're trying to get to your form and contribute to the team, and we're happy to have you back. Go face off against Chris Sale. And then Wednesday, day game, 1:10 p.m. Eastern, getaway day, Grant Holmes versus Sean Manaea. And honestly, I'd have rather see Sale versus Manaea. I think that'd be a lot more fun to watch, just those two guys, because Sean Manaea, when he's at his best, is diet Chris Sale. Or diet caffeine-free Chris Sale, right? Part of the reason his career was saved by Jeremy Hefner, by the way, current Braves pitching coach Jeremy Hefner, was him dropping his arm angle, changing where he was on the rubber, all in an effort to emulate Chris Sale. So, honestly, I'd love to see Sale versus Manaea on Tuesday, or bump Sale an extra day of rest and put him on Wednesday. I don't care. But we get Sale Scott on Tuesday, Holmes Manaea on Wednesday. We will be back tomorrow to break down more of what's going on. There will not be a show on Wednesday morning because the show would be up for an hour for the game starts, and instead I'll just do a scouting report first thing in the morning. We'll do that. If something cool happens, maybe I'll be able to get a short out that night, or a short episode out that night, but we'll come back on Thursday. And then I'm expecting Ronald Acuña Jr. to get activated for this Mets series. He wasn't in the lineup on Sunday in Gwinnett. He played game 1 of the doubleheader on Saturday, was not in the lineup game 2, and was not in the lineup and not at the field on Sunday. And now, Gwinnett does allow veterans, when they have a rest day, to not come to the field at all. Andrew McCutchen played both games of the doubleheader on Saturday. he didn't come to the field on Sunday until late in the day. After the game, I think, or late in the game or whatever, because they got to come in and get all the information about the next trip and all that good stuff. Get treatment if they're sore and all that good stuff. And I'm sure at age 40 or 39 or whatever he is, he's pretty sore. So I'm expecting Ronald back as soon as tonight. We'll see what happens. My assumption would be Brew Hick when we get the option back down. I posted a short yesterday talking about what do you do with the lineup? Do you keep Ronald leading off? Do you put Baldwin up there? Do you put Harris? What do you do? Curious to see what they do, but I expect him to be back in the lineup at leadoff and batting right field. Honestly, probably as soon as I upload this episode and walk away, they'll go ahead and announce that transaction. That's how it always works. Stay tuned to the channel. Stay tuned to BravesToday.com. A lot of stuff coming up this week. We're pushing hard between now and the trade deadline, including Taylor has his prospect rankings. Braves Today's first ever prospect rankings. We're going to add them to the prospect composite, but we're going to publish an article with our thoughts on the Braves' top prospects. So stay tuned for that. That'll come out this week as well. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.